Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to do a really gorgeous card design that's suitable for any occasion, and it is inspired by my latest book, Birds, Bees and Blossoms. We're going to do a really lovely but simple bird of paradise featured in amongst some lovely foliage. So grab your paints and let's get started. I'm so excited to do this with you. I hadn't really thought of doing much animal painting or bird painting outside of Patreon because we are very much in an animal painting phase over there at the moment, if you're interested in seeing some videos on animal painting tutorials. But for now we're going to do a lovely simple introduction to painting a sort of exotic bird of paradise. No bird in particular, just one that's sort of come from my imagination. But to begin with, I've just drawn a three-sided rectangle in the middle of the page, and now I basically want to create an arch. So I'm just drawing a curve on top, and if that looked completely effortless, I will just give you a bit of a guide. Basically, I made sure that I found the middle point of my rectangle so then I could measure my compass points to make sure I had exactly the right size, and also a point of that centre mark where the spike would go. So I've got a lovely arch, so these can move to one side, and I need some brushes. So here are my trusty brushes. We're going to paint in a really dilute, lovely sort of blush colour. And the colours I like to use these days to make a blush are permanent rose and yellow ochre. Yeah, a bit unexpected. You'd normally go for an orange. That's what I've done a lot in the past, but actually the lovely sort of bronze of a yellow ochre mixed with permanent rose, nice and dilute. I think the key thing is getting it nice and dilute. Really makes a rather beautiful colour. So I always have a large brush for mixing, and then my actual painting brushes I like to have a bit more control. So I've got a size 4 here, and I'm going to colour this in using I'm going sort of as fast as I can to make sure that the paint does not dry too fast on the page. Not only am I using a very dilute colour, but I'm also sort of adding water to my brush. I mean, you're very welcome to use a larger brush if you like, but I think if you're fast enough, you can get a pretty nice even coverage with a size 4 brush. So just moving nice and swiftly, and what's going to happen is this will dry and we'll get a lovely crisp outline, and also the pencil will be able to be rubbed out because the paint is very faint, and also the pencil is quite light itself. That's something I get asked an awful lot about, is how I rub out the pencil after my paintings. Well, usually I've rubbed the pencil to be the faintest it possibly could be before painting. Okay, now of course you could mask a shape if you wanted, but when you're doing curves it's quite hard to get a masked area really cleverly, unless you've got a clever machine like a Cricut machine which cuts out shapes for you. Anyway, we're going to let that dry and then paint up some lovely detail over the top. Now that's completely dry, which is great. So now, taking my pencil, I'm going to draw in a few sort of branches that are going to create the composition of this piece. And then of course we're going to have a lovely bird, and so I'm going to have that bird sitting here. Now we're going to do a really simple take on a bird here. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin with an oval, and then essentially that oval, find the centre of it, and I'm going to now draw in this sort of triangular fan which is going to be the tail feathers. And then from the top we can then find a head just going over the side, and then I'm actually going to put in some sort of shoulders, which is going to give us some lovely wings. And there we go, we've got ourselves a lovely bird shape. So we're going to be sort of painting in lots of lovely detail on the bird, but to begin with we're going to start with some washes. So I am going to just wake up my Cobalt Turquoise because we've got a pinky blush background, and to contrast with that I thought it'd be rather nice using a complementary colour, a greeny blue, and we want to just build up the shape by painting in the contours of the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by just using, I've got a 2/10 brush here, and I am painting sort of the outline around the head and neck, and then I'm going to clean my brush off and I'm going to draw that colour inwards. So we've got colour on the edge, and then we're going to draw the colour in so there's a sort of blend, but there's not a huge amount going on there, so the colour's coming from the side. And I'm actually going to bring that colour in across the body. And also paint in the basic shape of the tail feather we've got. So all we're doing is creating a really, really simple wash, but in doing so we're also building a sort of basic sense of contours of the body. And that's given us our outline to know that with the leaves and branches we know sort of where our bird is sitting. So if we focus now on the leaves and branches, I've got some burnt sienna here, and I'm going to get the yellow ochre into play as well to really warm up the brown colour. But I also want to make a shadow tone as well. So shadows are a mixture of brown and blue, whether you go for something like French ultramarine blue or a Prussian blue, or my Paynes Grey has quite a lot of blue tones in it. I know not everybody's does, but I quite like using Paynes Grey at the moment. It's just how I feel at the moment. I might change my mind when I come across a new colour. And also for our leaves, I'm going to mix, we've just got Sap Green here, but I'm also rather enjoy the green gold. It's a lovely yellowy green colour. So yes, I've got my colours ready mixed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by painting in the sort of simple basic structure. So I'm just going to have lovely leaves because the bird is going to be my my focus, and you know we're just sort of getting used to the idea of painting these kinds of compositions. So I've got a 3/10 brush here, and I'm just allowing the sort of pressing down and pressure on the brush to create some slightly nice sort of wobbly branches here that always sort of taper off into a thinner thinner branch as they get towards the edge, and the idea is I want it to look like they are coming from out of the arch. So I'm just going to fill that all in, and then we can start putting in some leaves. And once that's painted in, we can start to add smaller branches. Notice how I'm really making sure nothing is too much of a straight line. And then I can also begin to bring in the darker colour. Now, the darker colour for me works nicely when it's sort of used fairly sparingly. So I've sort of run it along the bottom edge there. And then I'm just going to sort of dab it a little bit, so we get little dashes of the texture. It's also quite useful for sort of creating shadow and darkness. But yeah, it doesn't go everywhere. And then we can sort of put a bit of that in, but then also be thinking about where our leaves are going to go. So I'm going to start painting in lovely sort of long green gold leaves, and then just drop in a bit of sap green. Now, this isn't a particular species of tree that I've got in mind. I'm just sort of having a bit of fun with it all. I'm just creating a nice sort of tableau piece, really. So as I said, this is a kind of introduction to these types of tableau style pieces of painting. But essentially we use the leaves and the branches to fill up the space and create the arrangement that we want. So they might sort of come up, might sort of end up having one really quite high up here that we haven't quite drawn in enough branch for yet, but that's fine. The dark colour can always come in and add little, so you can add little sort of stumpy twigs or bracts like that. We're just slowly building up, but just remember that your bird is really the main event. Now we've got the basic washes in for everything and everything's dry, it means we can start to do some details. So for our bird, we're just going to do a fairly simple design, but what I've done is I've mixed up more concentrated Cobalt Turquoise, which was the colour we used for the wash, but I've also got some Winsor Blue here as well, which is a Winsor and Newton colour, but it's just like a slightly turquoisey blue. It's really nice. And I've got a size 4/10 brush, which is the smallest brush in the set that, oh no, actually it's not a 4/10, it's 3/10, so it's the second smallest that I use. And I might find that I go on to move onto a smaller one very quickly. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a bit of fun here. I am going to just draw in some wings, just with some lines like that, and then take my other blue and I'm just sort of playing around, really. It's what I love about colourful birds and birds of paradise, is they're a really nice sort of inspiring thing to doodle I suppose, and this would be a Birds of Paradise doodle for you, just to get you interested in the subject. Okay, so those little dashes make really nice wings, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of, I'm going to do a line off the head, but I'm going to flick it out. And then I'm going to blend it down. Just smooth it there. I'm going to blend it down into the body. And then just sort of start dragging it down with little brush strokes to start getting slightly more textured, feathery details. I'll leave that at the top there, and then colour that's going to kind of blend up into the body. And we're just sort of blending it down and up through the body, getting lovely sort of more textured brush strokes and flashes of colour. Oh, that's really fun. And I'm just going to allow that to dry a little bit, and then we'll put in some final detail. But we can now look at our leaves and get a little bit more detail on those. So again, we're going to use a more concentrated version of the colour. I've got Sap Green here, and I'm just going to place in little lines down the middle, and then some just flaring off to the side. And what's nice is you can do this whilst your bird is drying. It's the joy of watercolour, is it? There's always something you can be doing rather than sort of sitting around waiting. Or of course you could just start another painting if you are sitting around waiting. And the other thing we can be doing is just that little bit of that darker colour, getting just even more little bits of detail. I think that's what really makes pieces really sing, is if you just spend that bit of extra time playing around with just little extra marks for texture and shadow, and it really brings a piece to life. Right then, the final stage is last bits of detail on this bird. So I'm going back to my Cobalt Turquoise with my smallest brush, and I'm just going to start by putting little tips on the feathers, and we'll pop in an eye. And then we can start to really sort of add all sorts of nice little details. So I'm just using my smallest brush to paint in lots of little sort of tufts on the bird, sort of little feathery lines. Oh, it makes the table wobble a bit. So as I said, this is a very sort of stylized little bird, but I will just give it a little bit of Paynes Grey. Underneath that beak and in the eye. Because you know I can't help myself when it comes to a bit of detail. However, that is a really nice sort of introduction to just creating a lovely little tableau of a bird. And gosh, you could just keep going as I really want to. Even though I know Ant will be shouting at me now to just stop, because everyone's seen enough and we can all paint quite happily now from what we've done. But it's fun, and that's essentially what I want to get over to you is this kind of stuff is fun. And you've created a really beautiful little tableau there which you could turn into a card perfect for any occasion, or just create a lovely few pieces of art for your wall or your journal. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. And if you really like painting birds and animals like that, then I can highly recommend having a check out of my new book, because it's got all sorts of animals that we've not painted on YouTube. You can get this by checking the episode notes below for links to buy. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos like these that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and let me know in the comments how you got on. And of course, if you never want to miss another video, just subscribe by hitting the subscribe button and that little notification bell. Okay, until next time, bye!